Okay, so we have some special circumstances that I'd like to discuss because, psychology is full of special circumstances, let's be honest. I think, some of the reasons why psychology gets called a softer science than other sciences is because of all these what ifs. Other fields of research may not have to deal with human subjects as often, and they don't have as many what ifs. So, what if there aren't that many potential research participants for you to use in your study? What if you want to do a study of former US presidents? What if you want to do a study of people with a specific type of brain injury? What if you want to study people with obsessive compulsive disorder, which only accounts for about 1% of the population? What if there are few potential research participants? And to make things worse, even if you had enough participants, random assignment may not create equal groups for some reason or another. What if you have these circumstances where you can't get enough participants and or the randomization procedure may not work? What can we do? Well, we can use a non-random assignment technique. There are a lot of different non-random assignment methods that are really effective. Repeated measures is a great way to get around randomization problems if you can use it. It doesn't work in all conditions, but if you can use it, it's a great way to get around randomization. The idea in repeated measures experiments is that the same participants are going to be tested in both conditions. One great thing about this is that you don't have any extraneous variables. You can't have any differences between people because everybody's being tested in both conditions. This is what I've been trying to explain to my research assistants as I've been advocating for just using frame rate as the independent variable. Because what we would do in this experiment is have all participants have exposure to half the trials being 60 frames per second and half the trials being 120 frames per trial per second. And it really wouldn't matter if some of the participants are experts and some of the participants are novices, because everybody's serving as their own control. Everybody is having the 60 frame rate experience and everybody's having the 120 frame rates, frames per second half the time. The beauty of that is that you get rid of any extraneous variables such as differences between people. It doesn't matter if some people are experts and some people are novices because everybody's experiencing the same thing. Everybody's serving in both conditions. So you're serving as your own control as a participant when you're experiencing both conditions. And this experiment that we're discussing is a perfect example of an opportunity to do it within subject's design, because it doesn't matter if the participants have seen some of the scenes at 60 frames per second and some at 120. It doesn't matter. Our participants are probably going to experience like 30 trials. Half of the time the trials will be 60 and half the time they'll be 120. It doesn't affect them that they've already seen some things at 60. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. And so it's a perfect design for repeated measures. Now, when you go on to statistics, you'll notice that they oftentimes refer to this as a within subjects design. In a lot of the statistical calculations, they call it a within subjects design. And it kind of makes sense because repeated measures make sense because I'm going to take the one participant and measure them repeatedly, giving them some exposure to one condition, some exposure to the other condition. It also makes sense to call it a within subjects design because the comparison that I'm going to make is within a subject. So what was your response when you saw the stimuli at 60 frames per second? What was your response when you saw it at 120? And you serve as your own control. I'm making comparisons within the subject. So here, to use that songs, no songs example, I could have one group, give them their vocabulary test to establish what their vocabulary was before, have them listen to songs while learning a list of words and taking a vocabulary test, then give them another opportunity to study a different list of words with no music in the background and give them a vocabulary test on that list of words and see if there's anything different. If I see that they perform way better in the songs condition than they did in the no songs condition, I could make the argument that it really is the songs. I mean, the participants were held steady. You can't claim that there were inherent differences between the groups or something when it's one group tested in two different conditions. Now, hopefully, again, your research spidey senses are coming up and you're saying, well, hold on a second. Maybe the experience with the songs carries over into the no songs condition. And this can be a problem with repeated measures. That, okay, you already got tested once, having been exposed to songs. How can I unexpose you to songs? So you might say to yourself, oh, we'll just test everybody with no songs and then test them the second time with songs, and that way you don't get a carryover of the effect of songs, which is one strategy. But that introduces different kinds of problems. Not all situations are equally solved by introducing a repeated measures design. Sometimes the repeated measures introduces a new problem, like the test-retest problem. So maybe instead of doing repeated measures, you might want to do a matched pairs design. What we do in a matched pair is we have all of our volunteers measured on with some variable. Maybe I'm interested in age. And then I equate the participants pair by pair for age, let's say. Usually it's going to be some variable that could be a compound, so that's why I pulled age out as an example. I mean, if I have people ranging in age from 18 to 50, I might, hypothesize that the 18-year-olds up to some certain age might, possibly score differently just because of their age than the people who are 35 to 50 or something. So maybe that's why I'm going to equate them on age. So what you do is you measure the variable, find out how old they are in this case, and then create pairs of participants who are the same on this variable. So I'd get a pair of 18-year-olds, get a pair of 22-year-olds, pair of, I might have several pairs of 18-year-olds. That's fine. But I create pairs, and then once I've got these pairs formed, each member of that pair has an equal chance of being assigned to the experimental or to the control condition. So once I've got pairs, the random assignment occurs within the pair. So each partner has an equal chance of being in the experimental or the control condition, but what we're ensuring is that the experimental condition has an equal number of people with the variable of interest, and the control condition has an equal number of people with that variable of interest. So there's an equal number of 18-year-olds in each condition and so on. The benefit of this matched pairs situation is that you end up with two groups, but you know that they're fundamentally the same on some factor that you think might be a confound. So here's an example. So here we have 13 people. I pulled this picture off the internet, so I guess I could have tried to Photoshop it, but well, anyway, we're going to pretend like this is like Survivor. We got one extra woman. She's just not going to be picked. So what we're going to do is form 6 pairs. We're going to have 2 women, 2 women, 2 women, 2 men, 2 men, 2 men, 2 men. Let the one extra person go. And then we're going to randomly assign one member of each pair to each group. So one person from each group is going to be randomly assigned to be in the control group, and one member from each pair is going to be randomly assigned to go into the experimental group. So that you end up with the experimental group being half male and half female, and the control group being half male and half female. You've ensured that factor has been controlled for. Another thing that you could do is, I'm sorry that this went from saying, non-random assignment methods to suddenly my slides saying correlated assignment. That's the same, they mean the same thing, but I noticed in the textbook it changed the name. It's using the name non-random assignment. So I was trying to be consistent and lost track of it on my slides apparently. So correlated or non-random assignment. Maybe instead of matching people for the experiment, maybe I find pairs of participants who already are in their pair. So for example, it could be people who are biologically related. So maybe I get sisters, or they're socially related, I get members from the same club or something like that. And from the pair that's naturally occurring, I randomly assign one member to the experimental condition, the other member to the control condition. really commonly done in twin studies. So those are what we call natural pairs. Okay, so these are all different ways of, let's face it, I couldn't do true randomization, but this is a way to get around it. So there's different strategies for how to get around the lack of randomization. All of this is designed to help us to avoid a confounded experiment. Okay, let's go ahead and take a little break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about what a confounded experiment is in the next segment.